Man, I wish we had a car. Hey, John, 20 more miles. Go on, let's go. All right, get in! Today on Grand Thumb, men want one thing and it's disgusting. They want an end-of-the-world vehicle that can withstand an EMP blast. So we talk about a lot of topics of Grand Thumb, and the question is, why? Mr. John?
I mean, well, guns are cool, but you might need to broaden your horizons because, I mean, like we talked about, man isn't spelt G-U-N. Guns are cool and all, they're awesome, but you gotta know other things, right? I mean, if things get bad, yeah, it's gonna be violent. You're gonna need to know how to use a gun, but what happens after that? You might need to know how to fix a car. You might need to know how to do other stuff like plumbing or whatever, but for now, vehicles.
How do you conduct vehicle patrols? How do you fight out of a vehicle? How do you maintain a vehicle? What type of vehicle should you look for? And what maintenance tips do we have? Today on Grand Thumb, all of that and more as we explore a very vital subject, being Toyotas of war, but kind of Toyotas of war.
Toyotas of war.
Toyotas of war, right?
Yeah, stateside.
Yeah, stateside. Now, before we get into it, we of course have to thank the big sponsor of the channel, is Primary Arms. If you're looking for all of the coolest stuff, we cannot recommend them enough. From the coolest pistol optic, the HTX-1, to many, many more. Go and give Primary Arms a big thank you. And of course, if you're looking to get your hands on something that's incredibly American, well, we cannot recommend enough a lever action rifle. More American than apple pie and conquering territories, the Henry rifle will just make you look cool. There's no way about it. Guys, if you want to get better at shooting, we recommend dry fire matches. Turn your weapon into a dry fire machine. And finally, all ammunition sponsored for by AAC. And of course, a very, very special thank you to Foreign Connect Imports. With all that being said, talk is cheap and imported Hiluxes are what, Sawyer?
They're not cheap. They're hard to find.
They're not as bad as you think though, you know?
Really?
We could put it into the affordable category. You know, within your friend group, you might have a gun guy, you might have an autism guy, but you might also have guys with expertise in things that are very important at the end of the world for a bad situation. So we want to give a very, very special thank you to Foreign Connect Imports. Talk about your company, man. Let's get into it.
So
we have our car guy right here.
Yeah, so my name's Aaron. I'm with Foreign Connect Imports in Arizona. We actually reached out to Mike on Instagram over and over and he just wouldn't respond.
Yeah, no.
Finally did, and then we got together and we pretty much created this off of, piece of paper, drew it up. He wanted a super reliable vehicle that would pretty much just fit his channel and, something that looks like it's, directly out of war.
One reason this came about is when I was in Haiti, the thing that really impressed me the most is I was right in the back of a Hilux. And the thing was running on like 4 flat tires through the rain down a rain slick mountain. There was no oil in the car, and I was like, dude, how do you maintain this truck? And they're like, oh, we'll put oil in it. I'm like, do you like change the oil? They're like, no, we just put oil in it. Yeah, I'm like, oh my god, but it still ran. Whether it be a Hilux or some of the other vehicles we're going to talk today, there are some very reliable vehicles that you can choose and that you can outfit in certain ways to fit some very bad scenarios that still look like they're going to be fine on the street. You don't want to have a big calling card, obviously, that says, hey, I have a vehicle of war. Obviously, this thing's a little ostentatious, but we did that to get your attention, to bring something cool into the channel. But the point is, having a vehicle with those capabilities for off-road, for end of the world, that doesn't rely on electronics and that's easily repairable is incredibly important. And whether you've deployed, whether you've been in a bad situation, you know that having a vehicle that you can rely upon and that you know how to work on is important. So given your expertise in cars, what we're going to be talking about with you today is the different types of vehicles that you would recommend, some of the modifications that we've made and that you've made to it, and what to look for.
Yeah, like Mike said, when he was in Haiti, these motors were built to last even with people just completely abusing them. That's why you've seen these trucks get flipped right back on over, and then they just keep driving. And
did Whistling Diesel try to kill one?
Yeah, exactly. And it's unkillable. These motors, they're not all too fast, but they sure are reliable. They got a lot of torque. And pretty much, you don't even have to be a car person or have a bunch of knowledge on cars to know how to maintain this this truck. It's really gonna help you more than you're gonna help it. Yeah, so for Mike's particular vehicle, this is a 95 Hilux. There are many, though, other reliable vehicles that you could build that are, you know, cheaper, more expensive, but all around like the same reliability, and you can trust, you know, to take you pretty much anywhere.
There's some other vehicles that people can get stateside that have like a lot of the same reliability that like a Hilux would have.
You know, I really like, I've worked on cars my whole life, and I would say any of the old, like, you know, the OBS 7.3 Fords, you know, definitely not the 6.0s unless, you know, you bulletproof it and stuff. I know I'm gonna get hate for saying that, but
You gotta have an opinion, man.
I just have, you know, I've had them all. I've had all types, you know, Ford, Dodge, Chevy, everything. I really like the second gen Cummins, you know, the third gen Cummins. There are gas vehicles though that are super reliable, like even, you know, American spec Tacoma or Toyota pickup or 4Runner. There's a reason that there's so many still on the road, and the reason that, you know, they keep going up in price is just because the engine is just so reliable and so well built. And a lot of the vehicles that we actually source, so we build a lot more, you know, turbo diesels, Prados, Land Cruiser Prados, 70, 80, 90 series, even 100 series Land Cruisers, super reliable. Toyota Hilux Surfs, which is basically like the 4Runner version that was made in Japan and other countries, but those are all super reliable as well. We bring all those in, kit them out, build them out. So honestly, the more horsepower you're adding to these vehicles, you know, the less reliable. You know, you're making it easier to break the drive shafts, but it all depends on, you know, the situation that you want this vehicle to be in.
So you're saying that because it's less fast, again, I'm just a gun guy, man.
Yeah, no, I know.
Because it's less fast, there's not as much stress on the engine, so the engine has more power, therefore
yeah, you gotta think that, you know, these were designed by, you know, techs that every single part was tested at a certain level of, you know, it can withhold this amount of power, and when you're adding all this other power, you're putting more stress on the motor, which in turn is making it less reliable.
You know what? You learn something. It's like adding a suppressor to a gun.
Exactly.
Yeah, the gun cycle's harder. It's just harder on it.
Which is totally okay, you know, depending on what you want to do. You know, if you want a high horsepower car, but if you want something that's going to take you through anything, and you know, the world could end tomorrow, and you're set, and everybody else's car is just blowing up, no parts, nothing, and you got this, you're all good. You know, I'll take this slow car all day.
I can't wait to talk more about this. Now, compared to moving on foot, it's great to have a vehicle. There's a lot of considerations that come into play. But probably the best part is the fact that, well, you can carry a lot more ammunition, a lot more firepower, and a lot more tools to make yourself successful in a variety of situations. So today we're going to be drawing upon our extensive experience within the military operating out of small vehicles very similar to this, and a couple things that you might want to think about employing on your vehicles or keeping with you. John, if you want to go ahead and start.
So one cool thing about riding around in the vehicle is you can get away with the larger weapon systems. Like for example, 5.56 and 5.45, they really are the de facto best general purpose infantryman's round. You can carry a lot of rounds. It's great, but everybody wants the performance of 308, but nobody wants to deal with the weight and the size and bulk of 308. But if you're in a vehicle, that pretty much doesn't matter anymore.
It's like, hello, 20 mags,
yeah,
308, because I don't have to carry it.
That or a 249 saw, something like that. You can get away with having those larger weapon systems. You can take advantage of that firepower. So the reason why I really like the idea of a 308 battle rifle for something like this is if you're driving on a road, typically on a road there might be other cars, there might be bad people in those cars. 308 does really well at going through those cars. Also, not even combat, just if you're driving down a back road, the world's ended, you're hungry, and you see a deer on the side of the road, 308's great for that. So
that's a fact. We love 308. 308's going to go through soft skin vehicles, which brings us to another point. So this is a soft skin vehicle. What we mean by that is this is not going to provide cover. It does provide concealment, and there is cover behind the engine block, but generally while you're driving inside of it, you are a target. So there are a couple considerations that you should have on yourself. So one of those is going to be a smoke grenade.
So yeah, IWA smoke grenades is the newer rapid smoke. These are actually very, very good.
Great.
One cool thing you can do is you can have these pre-staged all around the vehicle, and you and your groove, you can have an SOP or standard operating procedure, as the military likes the acronyms, and just everyone knows, hey, there's one on the dash, there's one in the covers, there's one in the glove box, yada, yada, yada. And it's just, if you need to screen or conceal your movement, then all right, hey, grab a smoke grenade, and everyone, no matter what, they know where at least one of the smoke grenades are, and then they can grab one and just huck it out the window and then keep moving. And it's not going to be like a magician, poof, you're gone, but it's going to do something. So it's going to give you a little bit more of an advantage, and you want to have as many advantages as you possibly can get, such as having a Hilux, right?
So obviously in the case of this vehicle, it is a right-hand drive vehicle, but wherever the passenger may be, having a lot of good options for him to get to is going to be awesome. So like right in the glove compartment right here, like John was talking about, you have a smoke grenade. If you have anything more spicy like frag grenades, that's also a really good option to have. Another thing that I like to have on me is of course going to be some type of thermite grenade. So an incendiary of some type. What's great about those is those can disable vehicles fairly easily. So those are something that I like to keep on my kit or keep in my vehicles so that we can slag out other vehicles' engines. You can simply pull the pin on those, set those on the top of an engine block, and you can do a lot of damage, ensure that that vehicle is not going to go anywhere. Of course, you can shoot a vehicle as well, but depending on the caliber, you might not always have the firepower to completely take that vehicle out of the conversation. John, I know you have some medical stuff to get into.
Yeah, so it's always good to have a pre-staged IFAK in your car, even like not even your bug out into the world vehicle, just your normal vehicle, just have an IFAK in there. You're more likely to get into a car wreck than a gunfight. But anyways, have an IFAK at least somewhere, and also make sure everyone knows where it's at. Same thing with tourniquets. So this is a Blue Force Gear micro trauma kit. It is a good kit, but honestly, I would recommend a larger one, and also it doesn't need to be camouflaged. You can get a cheapo like red one because it's in the vehicle. What does it matter if it's camouflage at that point? You want something high vis in, the bad situation. You need to fix your buddy. Easy to find a red med kit. So yeah, I would definitely recommend at least 2 like very hardy high vis med kits, and everyone knows exactly where they are and what the contents of them are and how to use them. So
that's perfect. So a couple other considerations we have are going to be our heavy weapons and our sustainment. So when it comes to our heavy weapons, we have a saw here, not exactly a heavy weapon. We typically recommend something like a 240 because 308 is a very deadly round. But there's a couple options when it comes to your belt-fed weapons. And the question is, where am I going to get a belt-fed weapon? Well, at the end of the world, everything's free. So one thing that we like is there are various companies that offer adapters that hook onto the tail hitch that allow you to have your machine gun mounted, whether that be a 240 or a 249 or whatever you might have your hands on. Those, of course, are going to be rearward facing. You can, of course, get some type of stand, a pintle mount, that will allow a man to hold on to the gun as the vehicle's driving. Those are great. However, one consideration is going to be that if things aren't complete anarchy, you are going to be driving a vehicle with a machine gun mount on the back. So I like the option of removing it at times. Finally, another thing that we can do is you can finally run it dirty. John, I know that you're a saw gunner. Do you want to talk about just operating a saw without a pintle mount off the back of a vehicle?
okay, yeah. When it comes to the saw, like I would honestly not even want a pintle mount.
Hey, John, how many people's faces have you melted with a belt-fed weapon?
We're not going to talk about that, right? Yeah, so something like a 249 saw, I wouldn't even want a pintle. I would want a pintle for something like a 240 or a PKM. But I remember whenever we would ride around in vehicles with the saw, it would just be this, and we would just have pork chops. Pork chops are like the big 200 round plastic things that the military has. We would just have those staged around the vehicle, similar to the IFAK. And it was, of course, my job as a saw gunner. I would know where they were. But yeah, me personally, I would just not even want it on a pintle. And for civilian considerations, just in with a forced reset trigger, like we just did a video on.
Oh yeah.
That would be kind of silly to have an AR-15 on a pintle. But I'm just thinking maybe a bunch of mag pouches with a bunch of 40 round sticks up here and do it that way.
Especially being off the back, you might want to consider lanyarding yourself in, whether it be a helo retention lanyard or something off the metal frame, because when you're in the back, I don't know if you've ever stood up in a vehicle when it's driving around, but if you're standing up and the vehicle's turning as you're in the back, it's nice to have something to grab onto. And if all you're grabbing onto is a saw that's attached to nothing, there's a good chance you're going to go out and you're going to die. And that's a stupid way to die. So consider having like a helo retention lanyard or some type of, you can also use a climbing rig and just have yourself lashed into the frame with quick disconnect. That's fairly easy to do. Just make sure that, although the end of the world is occurring, although war is occurring, nobody outranks safety, right, John?
Yeah, Sergeant Safety outranks everyone.
It's a real bitch.
It's so silly. Say you start taking rounds from the right, it's like a half-ass ambush. If the pintle's right here, it's going to be kind of awkward trying to, I'd like to be able to just freely maneuver this thing wherever, or quickly dismount with it rather than having to unpop a pin.
Yeah.
So there's pros and cons, like with everything, pros and cons. Just if it makes sense for you, if you're a guy with an SOT and you have a 240, then cool, like throw a pintle on it. But if not, then maybe just roll with it like this.
Then get it for free from the military.
Yeah. So go finesse one from the local guard.
Finally, one thing that we have to talk about is, of course, sustainment. So there's still going to be times during an operation, during whatever's happening, that you may need to dismount. So get out of your vehicle and stow in some way. So there's a couple considerations there. First one is going to be your packs. Obviously, if you have somebody gunning in the back of your vehicle, you want to have space for him to maneuver in the bed of the vehicle. So by having this grid bolted onto the side of the vehicle, this is a modification that you'd see that's pretty common within the military. What this allows you to do is to lash your packs onto the outside of the vehicle. And what you do is you do just a carabiner on the inside of the pack frame. And then you take some bungee. As you can see, we've lashed the hell out of this because we have a little bit more length, because usually you'd have like 3 or 4 packs on the outside. And this allows to keep them from bouncing and stuff. There's some other ways you can lash them as well. The point is, with some 550 cord, with some bungee and a carabiner, you can easily keep a lot of your extra items out on the side of the vehicle, because you are going to run out of space a lot faster than you'd think. And having the bed open so that you can grab a casualty and throw them in so you can have your guy maneuver is going to be important. So that's something to think about. One other thing is, we obviously have all this space here on the top. There are a lot of things you could do with this, from carrying like canoes and kayaks to camouflage. So right over here, we have some more camouflage items. So what we have is your basic Harry Potter invisibility cloak. We have our thermal hide nets. So these are thermally camouflaged. Obviously driving, you're going to get a lot of vehicle heat. So if you need to dismount, being able to camouflage your vehicle is going to be important. John, I'm sure you've used like the camo netting back in the day, just those huge 20-foot nets. So what you can do with these, John, if you want to come down here for a sec, is on these right here, these particular ones, they're reversible for like a mountainous terrain or a desert terrain, or some are for woodland and desert. But regardless of what it is, if you take these are fairly easy to stow. What do you forget? I'm just gonna roll this up. So whether it be inside like a pack that you keep on the top, or whether you just keep it more accessible. I'll grab that, lay it down. No. So we can take this, we can fold it up, and we can keep it right on top. And then we can lash that down with bungees. What this allows us to do is that once we stow it, we have that easily accessible, so we can undo the netting, camouflage the vehicle, and get it blending more into the terrain. This is going to be very important, especially due to air assets, whether the enemy has aircraft, satellites, or even a drone. A drone's going to spot you, no problem. So having the ability to camouflage yourself from the air or from eyeline is going to be important, and it is always good to have something. You can get thermal capabilities for thermal defeating, that's good, but even a camo netting is going to do a pretty good job, because it's still going to block a lot of that visible light going in, to where it's going to be harder to spot that thermal signature. Because no matter what, to be able to spot you, it does have to have a direct line of sight.
So back panels are cool and all, you can carry a lot of stuff in them, but a case against the back panel is driving in a vehicle. Some of the Hiluxes that I drove around in overseas in Afghanistan, they had the seats that you could undo the Velcro and they would fold out, so you could actually sit in them with a plate carrier. It was still wonky, but this is definitely a case for a slick plate carrier and just like an assault pack that you can throw on, because it is just, you can get out of Dodge, like even with a back panel on, but once you're driving, 25, 30 minutes, it really, really gets uncomfortable.
It digs in. One thing I like to do with my back panels, if I'm doing type of vehicle work, then anything that's in the back panel I take out, I like to be able to have a back panel that's collapsible, or the cryo ones are great because they're easily removable. The point is, understand what you're working with, because if you have a back panel that just doesn't come off unless you do like 12 rows of molly, it's gonna suck. Yeah. So that is a good consideration to have. Also a reason why we have the ability to lash our packs to the side, because if you have a pack on, yes, you can get out of Dodge, but then you need to be able to get comfy to make sure that you have easy accessibility to all the stuff that you have in your vehicle. Finally, the last consideration is going to be firearms within the vehicle. Obviously, having a rifle, you probably want a shorter rifle that can collapse. We have an MCX in there. I'll go around to the other side really quick. So the nice thing about having one that's easily collapsible is when you have a full stock rifle, it can be difficult to maneuver it. So by having something that can collapse down, it can be easier to shoot out of the vehicle. And then once you are out, you can deploy that stock and then get into it. But understand that working in and around vehicles is different. You can see here on John's Scar, that in the case of the Scar, the stock does fold, and he has that 308 capability. It can fire with the stock folded. These are all good considerations. The AR-15 is a great weapon, just might not always be the best for vehicle work.
Yeah, it's cool to have fighting rifles handy and all this, that, and the other. But honestly, I personally, I would like to have just a tiny, short little 22 long rifle suppressed, because if I'm driving down a back road and I see a squirrel on, running around on a tree limb, I'm going to stop real quick, pop that squirrel, grab it, throw it in the back, keep moving. Like, clean it, dress it, and eat it later.
That's very seer of you, John. Are you sure you weren't?
Yeah, but no, but the thing is, it's like, I know every redneck
John Smile Cam won.
I know every redneck back home is like, yeah, I've been, validated for having a 308 and a 22 laying around in my car everywhere I go.
Dude, they just know.
Yeah.
So with all those things being said, let's go ahead and let's continue the conversation on cars. Now, depending on what happens in a vehicle, it can be difficult to extract at times. So I'm sounding so tactical right now. It might be hard to get out of the vehicle. So one thing you might want to have on you is something to cut a seatbelt. There are seatbelt cutters at work. There are rescue tools that you can buy. They're specifically made. Trauma shears can do it, just not as well. So something specialized is always nice to have, especially within the vehicle or on your kit so that you know where it is. And then, of course, glass breakers. So if you've ever tried to break automobile glass, it's actually not the easiest thing to do in the world unless you know what you're doing. Having like a glass breaker that's on your knife that's already there is really nice. A lot of the Microtechs have those already. It's just that little ceramic piece, so when you hit it, it's just going to shatter. It could be important at times if your door gets jammed up to be able to get out of that. So just as a couple quick notes, let's continue. Now, there are a lot of different upgrades that you've added to this vehicle.
Yeah.
Tell us why you did this. Is it for shows to make it look cool, or is there a purpose?
No, yeah, so everything that we added, it was for a purpose. Starting with this front bumper, right? This is not just some dinky front bumper. This is bolted directly to the frame. So, I mean, you could take out, you could pretty much ram like the rear of a car. You could hit anything with it. It's going to protect like the most important parts of your motor, like the cooling, right? Because without cooling, you break your radiator, you're done. Like you're going to go a little bit, you're going to overheat, and then you're out of luck. So this is equipped too with a winch. Super important if you're ever stuck, or let's say you're with a team and they get stuck and you need to pull somebody out. It's always good to have a winch.
Jurassic Park.
Exactly.
There you have it.
You can come back anytime. And we got these rings right here. You could pull this out of anything. You could pull this, 75 degrees up a hill with that winch. So that we added. Light bar too. So we put this light bar in here, just more visibility at night. Let's say you need to see, obviously they're going to be brighter than these. And then front bumper. Then next most important part, let's say that you're crossing like a stream or a river, and you just got a lot of water somewhere. We put a snorkel in here. It's fully real. It's functional. So the main thing about keeping the car running is it can be completely submerged, right? Especially in something like this. It doesn't have a lot of electronics, and it'll just keep running as long as it's getting air, right? So let's say the water came up to here. Let's say it came up to here. It doesn't matter. It could come all the way up to here, still be running, because it's pulling air from here, which is super important.
You know what? Ever since I saw Dante's Peak, you remember that movie?
Yeah.
Yeah. He had a snorkel in it and saved his life.
Everybody should have a snorkel.
Yeah, he got away from Dante's Peak.
Exactly.
But in all reality, you just don't know what you're going to run into. So having a couple contingency plans in place is smart. Like they always say, it's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. And this really all serves dual purposes in any way.
Yeah, exactly. And then moving down the side, we got mud terrain tires on here. Let's say you're in like some really deep mud or some rough terrain. You can air these down and still have a bunch of grip. And then you can also, these don't have electronic hub lockers, which they're nice if, you're going out off-roading in your Jeep or whatnot, you just hit the switch, locks the hubs. But if you're in a real world situation where you're in danger and you want to get somewhere, you really don't want to rely on electronics to fail. So all you do literally to lock the front hubs is just twist it. That's it. Now your front hub is locked. You're going to have way more crawling power. You're going to be able to get up anything.
That's how all of our older military vehicles were. It was all manual hub locks.
Yeah, it's the best way to do it.
It just feels right.
Yeah. Exactly.
It feels like I'm doing it.
I know, right?
I'm like, yeah, four-wheel. My car's like, yeah, it's on. I'm like,
isn't it? Yeah. No, yeah. This is all old school. This is, in my opinion, this is way more reliable than the stuff that we have nowadays.
After the Chinese turn on all their chip killers.
Yeah,
exactly. Just kill every chip you have. That's real, right, John?
Yeah, your holosun just makes you shoot yourself.
Another important thing to have, just a roof rack on top. You know what you're gonna have to carry when you're out in the field. Like Mike said, this, tarps, bags, canoes, whatever it is.
A deer that you just shot.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
you can put them in the top.
War trophies. You never know.
A deer.
People.
Yeah. Another necessity for Mike was he wanted these volley panels. So we had these custom CNC made. You can just, hook up all your bags to this, more space, give the gunner more room back here, have a lot more, room for ammo and whatnot. We went ahead too and threw this Kurt hitch on here. It's always comes in handy if you ever need to tow something. You throw a ball in there, tow anything, tow your boat. You don't know what's going to be for free, when the world's ending.
It's not going to go fast.
No, it will tow it.
Oh,
It will tow it. Definitely won't go fast. Another thing a lot of off-road people do, make the truck look a little bit taller, is they take off these side steps. I think in this situation, you can hop on here, you can grab, 4 people in the truck, you can have some people hanging on the roof rack. This isn't going anywhere.
very tactical.
Yeah. So we left those on.
Another thing is obviously when your car is on, you can kill lights, but you can't kill every light. So one thing that I wanted to make sure that we had on this car is we had an ability to kill all lights in the vehicle during any type of, sounds so stupid, but like night outs. Whether you're driving at night, you're hauling around at night, you want to be able to keep your signature low because any light can be seen for miles through night vision. You flick a lighter at night and you could see that thing for miles. I think when we tested it was like 9 miles. So having any type of light in the vehicle is a huge liability. So you've installed a kill switch in this guy.
Yeah. So we hooked up a kill switch. Basically, when you're running at night, you can just flick the switch right here and it will, it's on right now. Circuit's complete, right? We switch that. When you step on the brake, no brake lights, nothing, no lights up here. You're completely ghost. Can't be seen.
So obviously we have a lot of upgrades that you've done to the vehicle as well. Yeah. John's going to talk to a little bit more of the combat setup of vehicles that you'll see. I know your dad did a lot of crazy stuff early Iraq war because quite frankly, the Humvees were not up armored at the time, which is hella dangerous in a combat zone. So John?
In Afghanistan, the Hiluxes that I had they were up armored from the get-go. Super nice. But 20-something years ago, when Dad was in Iraq, they had thin-skin Humvees. War is easy now.
War is easy now.
But some of the things
Ben would agree.
Some of the things they would do, they put sandbags in the floorboard for IED blasts. They would also hang flak jackets on the doors to stop something. That wouldn't stop a rifle round back then. But point is, there's like hillbilly armor stuff that you can do to a vehicle. Just do it within reason. Like, I'm not a car guy, but I know that if you do too much, you're gonna overpower the vehicle. It's gonna run like shit.
Yeah.
Which I guess, what you could do is you could get a bulldozer and then start putting a bunch of armor on that.
That's always a good option. Yeah, so that does bring John to a good point, which is on these early Humvees, a lot of armor was added, and this actually ended up just toasting these Humvees super fast. Like, I know our armored Humvees had tons of problems. Like, every night they were being taken apart trying to keep them running. So understand that the more weight you add onto a vehicle, especially armor, because armor is just heavy, dude. There's just no way around it.
Yeah.
You're going to run into some issues pretty quickly. So be strategic in the way you do it. Perhaps up armor during ops where you're going to be getting into contact, but otherwise be selective with the way you're doing it just because there's no free lunch. Either you have a super powerful vehicle and engine's not going to run as long, or a less powerful vehicle, the engine's going to run forever. It just can't take as much weight. So there's always going to be give and take to anything.
Yeah, it's not just we throw armor plate on this and it runs all right. It's going to be the armor plates plus all the other survival stuff, ammo, people riding in it, water, fuel, all that other stuff's going to add on top of it. It's not going to be a good time. So.
Yeah, and even coming to even the options that you option these vehicles at, you can see these are not electronic windows. Even there's more weight that you can just offset by, getting rid of stuff. Like that door panel is super flat, super easy to get rid of. It weighs probably a lot less than a traditional one with a bunch of electronics and all the motors and stuff.
That means there's just more weight to add with armor.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Another important thing to have is just, your brake rotors and brake pads. They last a long time, but it's always good if you can actually, build it before you're going to go on, a long trip or whatever. Or let's say the end of the world was tomorrow. You just want to make sure you can grab, maybe a set of brake pads. Just the newer the brake pads you have, the longer, the rotors are going to last. And that's the big issue. If you have bad rotors, you obviously can't stop. Brands that we like to use, we actually really like Power Stop a lot. Obviously, Brembo is peak for performance vehicles, but something like this, 4Runner, any domestic vehicle, we like using Power Stop. Brakes and rotors. Hawk pads are really good too.
Not as high of a priority, but easy to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Another thing that you want to consider is when you're getting these vehicles, automatics tend to last a super long time, but the thing that I like about the manual transmissions is the clutches are super easy to replace, and they're way less expensive than replacing a whole automatic transmission.
I'm just enjoying the vehicle, man. I'm just enjoying it,
dude. Feel it out.
I know for my vehicles, it sound really stupid, but automatic transmission fluid, I have to change that pretty, well, I don't change it.
Yeah.
Is that something?
No, it's definitely something you have to consider when you're maintaining an automatic trans, but usually with manual vehicles, you really don't have to swap the transmission fluid all that much at all, if ever. Another important thing that I just want to touch on real quick is you should probably have a set of tire chains in your truck or
Always tire chains.
yeah, that's like a really important part. If you're ever in, snow or anything like that, that's gonna really save your ass.
Yeah, I learned the importance of tire chains so fast. We used to, the survival training area that we're up, it's like up on the Canadian border right there.
Yeah.
Dude, like if even if you had 2-wheel, if you had tire chains, you were fine.
It's night and day.
Dude, if even with 4-wheel, no tire chains, you're screwed, dude.
No, 100%.
You couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
So like just having those is so easy. Just have tire chains. My God.
Another thing that is super important is having just a little onboard air compressor that you could just plug in, to your battery, and you could air up all your tires. Because let's say you're in a bind and you gotta air down your tires, you're in sand or something like that. You gotta air these tires all the way down just so you can get enough traction to, go through the desert or go through sand or mud or anything like that. And then it's just good to have an air compressor on board just so you can air them right back up.
Perfect. Well, that goes over a lot of really important maintenance topics that I know I didn't know much about going into this, especially like the different types of fluid.
Yeah.
So that was really cool to learn that stuff. So thank you for giving you guys the knowledge to us about that.
Yeah.
Now I feel more capable as a person. Now you just hang with us every day during the apocalypse.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
No, I know where I'm safe.
Well, so we talked about a lot of different setups. Let's go ahead and let's finish things up. A lot of people ask about fighting out of a vehicle. This is an important concept to know about. So the first thing we'll talk about is if you are in an ambush, you are caught off guard, you begin to get shot at, but your vehicle works, well, why don't you just get away? A lot of people think that they have to immediately fight when they're engaged. That is not the case. If your vehicle still works, if you do not need to engage these people, get away, because currently they have you in a position where they have advantageous fields of fire. They are set up for that ambush. They're set up with likely explosives. Leave that situation and fight them on your own terms if necessary. Now, that being said, if you're in your vehicle is hit by a grenade, a rocket, they chew it up with enough machine gun fire that it just doesn't run, and you do need to get out, well, that's definitely a conversation that we can have at this point. So me and John are going to do a quick demonstration right here of what using a vehicle for first cover and then bounding back will look like. Then after, we'll explain what that looks like. Move back! Move back! Nice and out of breath. So let's explain what we just did right there and why we did it. Sometimes the simplest drills that you do all the time are the most effective. This is one of them right here. So what we had happen right here is we had a contact left. Contact left versus contact right is going to determine who's going to be getting out and providing cover. Seeing that it was left, I grabbed my compact weapon. I began to fire out the window. This then gave John the opportunity to exit the vehicle. Even when the engine is shot up, it's still going to provide a lot of cover from those incoming rounds. So John, while you're firing, what's happening on my side?
So we're both in contact, but Mike he's the most out in the open, the most exposed, I guess you could say. So he's doing what he can to try to just get rounds down range. I'm getting out of the vehicle and I'm just, trying to lay down rounds as well. As soon as I'm doing that, since there's still bullets going down range, that gives Mike the opportunity. He gives him some breathing room to get out and then get out of the way as well. And as soon as he got to the other side of the vehicle, started shooting, then that's my cue that I can now start.
Now there are of course commands that you might have heard us saying, being moving and set. Those can be said or can be non-verbal. So we did a combination of those to show you two different options. So once I got on my position and began to fire, John knows from our training together and from our extensive military careers that once I begin to fire, that means my position is set. John then bounded back. So John, how far are you gonna bound back?
So it's gonna be situationally dependent, like terrain, how thick of the brush that you run into, stuff like that. But you wanna get a good distance away, but you also, I don't wanna be, running 3 or 4 football fields away while you're just hanging out, trying to fight the war for me, So I don't wanna say it depends, but it does. Get a good 10, 15 meters or so, but help your buddy out, right? His magazine's about to run dry. He's also like out in the middle of the open, making a lot of noise, drawing a lot of attention. So you need to pay attention to throttle control with your 30 round magazine. I'm gonna wanna support Mike as much as possible. I wish I could shoot full auto, but I've only got so many rounds on me. So good control pairs, making sure you're engaging known, likely, and suspected, not just spraying rounds, even though you might want to.
Now, once I'd set, John called a moving as he ran back. It can be done either way. I know John set once he either calls set or he begins firing. Once I heard John firing, I'm gonna bound double the distance he just went. I'm going to call set or begin firing. John knows that I'm set. And we're getting back, in this case, to a good defilade. So a place where we can go prone and have more cover to establish a situation and figure out what we need to do from there. But we're trying to get out of that immediate fire area, otherwise known as the X. The famous phrase you hear a lot is get off the X. That's your known location that you're being engaged from, and that they've likely set up a concentrated and coordinated ambush attack on. So there are a lot of ways to do this. There are a lot of ways to handle this. There are tons of different situations. We're giving you one that you can do. John, anything else to add to it?
I would just say don't get too attached to the vehicle. Like if it's done, it's done.
But I like it, John.
Yeah, I like it too. It's cool. It's just if it's donezo, if it's shot up, then you have to leave. Like you got to take care of yourself so you can take care of your family. So I mean, you got to get out of there. Nuh-uh.
So guys, that brings us to the end here. Let's go ahead, let's finish things up. So there's a lot that goes into choosing a car for bad situations, for the end of the world. Obviously, we're showing this Hilux right here. The point is, beyond just getting a good car, it's gonna take skills and knowledge. You should be brushing up on your automobile skills as far as both driving, as far as both replacing parts. You should be familiar with this stuff, as well as obviously your vehicular tactics, as well as the things that you're carrying in your vehicle. Everything's going to be dependent on your situation, where you live. Obviously, very cold environments, you're gonna have your vehicle set up differently. This is merely a primer. Now, with all that being said, I want to let you talk a little bit about your company here, because obviously you can do a lot of cool work, and I know you have a lot of cool things to talk about.
Yeah. So again, my name is Aaron. My company is Foreign Connect Imports in Tempe, Arizona. So we basically bring in all imports, anything that's over 25 years old. We can bring in any special order, or you guys can come check out our inventory. We do a lot of turbo diesel Hiluxes or Land Cruisers. We even do, performance cars like drift cars, even vans, camper vans, anything like that.
Have you got anything for Post Malone yet?
No, not yet.
You got it.
I wish I could. That'd be awesome. But yeah, even like overlanding stuff, we do a lot of that. And then we're a dealer for about like 200 different companies. So a lot of these parts can cross-reference to different Toyotas that are actually made here in the US. But if it's something that it gets here, we provide all the parts that actually come from Japan. So
I got spares. That's the point.
yeah, exactly.
That's all that matters.
Yeah, exactly.
So can people get this exact build, but maybe cooler?
Yeah, well, it's hard to be cooler than this, but yeah, we definitely can build you anything. We have Fab Guy, Paint Guy, Wrap Guy.
Fucking love
pretty
Fab
much do
Guys.
everything. I love Fab Guys.
Yeah.
Fab Guys are the best.
So good. Well, that brings us to our end. Thank you so much for doing this vehicle.
Yeah,
we got
so much fun.
We got tons more stuff coming on vehicular work with Foreign Connect Import. So stay tuned, guys. Obviously, go check them out. And that kind of brings us to the end. But the most important thing to us is, of course, the dad advice. Being that you're a guest, we always ask our guests to give a little bit of dad advice to our Lost fans. Maybe they don't have a dad. Maybe your dad made you some good advice. I don't think you have any kids, right?
No, not yet.
Okay. But if you had a kid, imagine the advice you'd give them. Go ahead.
Okay. This is what I always go back to. You can't put a square peg in a round hole. That pretty much sums that up. Just think about it.
That's how I got diagnosed with autism.
I know. Me as well. But yeah, that's some great life advice right there.
That's it right there, guys. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Remember, skills matter, training matters. Get after it. Tons more cool things coming. Stay tuned. Can you walk over here and show your t-shirt to everybody?
I had to fight hard in Vietnam for this t-shirt. Ho Chi Minh gave it to me right before I left. So we lost a lot of good men.